Georgia is one of the premier football programs in college football, and they've had their fair share of solid quarterbacks. On this channel, I do a series called A Bust Factory, where basically I go through every single quarterback a team has signed in a certain period, and we determine whether they produce good quarterback talent or whether they are a bust factory. In today's video, we're going to take a look at the Georgia Bulldogs and every quarterback that they have landed since 2010. They have signed a total of 11 guys, and we will go through each one of them. But right before we get started, apparently about 85% of you guys who watch my videos are not subscribed, and we need to help that number, so be sure to hit that subscribe button as it really helps my channel. Now let's get started and talk about Georgia quarterbacks. The first guy we need to talk about is Huston Mason. He came out of Marietta, Georgia, and he threw for a Georgia high school football record 4,560 yards and 54 touchdowns, and was the state's Gatorade Player of the Year. Despite that, he was only ranked a 3-star recruit, the number 30 pro-style quarterback, and the 664th best player in his class, and was never supposed to be a superstar by any means. As a true freshman at Georgia, he played in 4 games in 2010 as the backup to Aaron Murray. From there, he was a backup for a couple more seasons until 2013 when he would get a shot. Murray would get injured, and Mason would make his first career start against Georgia Tech. And after that season, he started all 13 games, throwing for 2,167 yards, 21 touchdowns, and 4 picks during the 2014 season. After that, he spent some time with the Redskins, the Canadian Football League, and in the Spring League, but he was done with football pretty quickly. He has since found a home as a color commentator and as a writer. He was a Georgia high school football legend, started for a year at a premier school, and made a brand out of himself, so it's hard to say he was a bust as a person, but compared to some of the hype, you could say he didn't have the greatest career. The next guy we need to talk about is Christian LeMay. He was expected to be a big deal coming out of Mathis, North Carolina, and he was a 4-star recruit, the number 1 pro-style quarterback, and the 70th best player in the class of 2011. LeMay's career at Georgia started in 2011, but it never really got off the ground from there. He attempted 2 passes over a 3-year career, but couldn't make any sort of push up the depth chart. He decided to transfer for his final 2 years, and he chose to go to Jacksonville State. He played sparingly and was a backup pretty much his whole entire career for the Gamecocks. He played professional football in the American Arena League with the Carolina Energy and with the Green Bay Blizzard. From there, he went into coaching, where he was the wide receivers coach at Jacksonville State, and now is the wide receivers coach at West Texas A&M. While he didn't pan out at Georgia, he did make something of himself in coaching. Compared to the hype, he was a complete bust in college football, though. This dude may become one of my favorite players ever, as we now need to talk about Faton Bauta. He was a huge recruit coming out of high school, and while he's only a 3-star guy, he did have an offer from numerous schools such as Florida State and Alabama. According to 24/7 Sports, he was a 3-star recruit, the number 10 dual threat quarterback, and the 442nd best player in the class of 2012. He played in 7 games combined in his first 3 seasons and had 1 memorable day. He started in their game against their rival Florida back in 2015, and in that game he looked absolutely terrible as he threw 4 picks, 0 touchdowns, and helped Mark Richt get fired. From there, he transferred and settled on Colorado State and would play in 9 games starting 1. After that, he spent time coaching at Colorado State, Monmouth, and South Carolina, and now he apparently started a business called the Quarterback Approach, and it seems to be a training program. While Bauta was not the number 1 recruit in his class, he did absolutely nothing in his time at Georgia, so it's safe to call him a bust. Bryce Ramsey was another Georgia high school football legend, and he was a star at Camden County High School. He chose to stay home at Georgia, and according to 24/7 Sports, he was a big deal. He was rated as a 4-star recruit, the number 7 pro-style quarterback, and the 102nd best player in the class of 2013. He was a backup his first year, and then in 2014 he'd play in 8 games, going 24 of 39 for 333 yards and 3 touchdowns after Huston Mason was injured. He played in 11 games in 2015, and from there he moved to punter and became pretty good at it actually. He wanted to graduate transfer, but Georgia needed depth, and he decided to stay. He never ended up living up to his potential and will go down as a bust. One of the most fascinating names on this list is Jacob Park. He had a pretty up and down career, and it started as he came into the state of South Carolina and was the Mr. Football Award recipient in that state. He passed for 3,700 yards and 38 touchdowns. He committed to Georgia over a ton of big-time programs and was seen as the next guy after Aaron Murray. According to 24/7 Sports, Park was a 4-star recruit, the number 6 pro-style quarterback, and the 119th best player in the class of 2019. After redshirting in 2014, he decided to transfer to Oklahoma A&M before he would later settle on Iowa State. He was known for his iconic long curly hair, and while he was a Cyclone in 2016, he would start 3 games and pass for nearly 2,000 yards and 12 touchdowns. He was the starter going into 2017, but after inconsistency, off-the-field drama, and injury, he was benched in favor of Kyle Kempt, and from there, Iowa State would beat 2 top 5 teams and have become a great program since. Park would then go on to Missouri Southern, and I'm not sure what he is up to now. He definitely has a wild story, and he's a player I've always followed, so he's going to get a video of mine at some point. While he did have a couple years of starting experience, he was not very good for Iowa State and never saw the field at Georgia, so he was a bust. So far, all the quarterbacks have been bust, but a lot of that can be blamed on Aaron Murray. Finally, Jacob Eason would change that narrative though. Coming out of Lake Stevens, Washington, Eason was a 5-star recruit and one of the top prep quarterbacks in the nation. He chose to commit to Mark Richt, but after he was fired, some thought he would leave. Would convince him to stay, and he was a gem. According to 24/7 Sports, he was a 5-star recruit, the number 2 pro-style quarterback, and the 5th best player in the class of 2016, and the 2nd best quarterback behind Shea Patterson. He started 12 games in 2016 and had a pretty fun freshman year. He led them to a thrilling win over Mizzou, where he made a clutch play on 4th and goal to win the game, and then a couple weeks later, he had one of the best throws I've ever seen against Tennessee, as he threw a dart to Riley Ridley, and it looked like they were going to upset the undefeated Volunteers. Unfortunately, Josh Dobbs and Jawan Jennings had other ideas, and Eason's throw is definitely overshadowed because of that. While he did lose to Vanderbilt, he still had a solid year as he passed for nearly 2,500 yards and 16 touchdowns as a freshman, but his potential is what everyone was so excited about. He was expected to be a superstar in 2017, but he got injured in week 1, and Jake Fromm would take his spot for the year. He announced he was going back home to Washington, where he would have to sit out an entire season. In 1 year with the Huskies, he threw for over 3,000 yards and 23 touchdowns, but it was kind of a forgotten year. From there, he was drafted by the Indianapolis Colts in the 4th round, where he is waiting for an opportunity to play, and he's one of my favorite players of all time, and I hope he gets a shot in the NFL. He was not a bust in college, as he put up numbers when he was healthy, but in terms of his actual recruiting hype, he was expected to be a first-round pick according to those recruiting rankings, and that is not where he has been NFL-wise. But today's video is about how Georgia treats their quarterbacks, so he is not a bust, but instead was a boom when he played. Jake Fromm had the best career of any Georgia guy this decade, and is the 2nd best quarterback on this list. Coming out of Warner Robins, Georgia, Fromm initially committed to Alabama, but he would later flip to stay home for the Bulldogs. He was a 4-star recruit, the number 3 pro-style quarterback, and the 44th best player in the class of 2017 according to 24/7 Sports, and there was a lot of hype with him. After Jacob Eason would go down against Appalachian State, Fromm took over and led them to a win over Notre Dame. From there, the Dogs would go to the playoff behind his arm, and they would lose in the title game to Bama in a heartbreaker, and you Georgia fans do not need to be reminded of how that happened. He was a freshman All-American and expected to get even better as a sophomore. He led them back to the SEC championship game as a sophomore, but they lost by way of a Jalen Hurts comeback in Atlanta, and then they lost to Texas in the Sugar Bowl, where Sam Ehlinger famously declared that Texas was back. He did have his best year though, as he threw for 2,800 yards and 30 touchdowns. His junior year was supposed to be his best year, and he could play himself into the first round of the 2020 NFL Draft, but he was inconsistent. They lost to South Carolina at home, but still found a way to go to the SEC championship game, where they would lose to Joe Burrow and LSU. He passed for over 8,000 yards and 78 touchdowns in his career, and then he was drafted by the Buffalo Bills in the 6th round. His time in the NFL will be very limited, but he left a nice legacy at Georgia. Some Georgia fans love him and some hate him, but he was a great quarterback, lived up to pretty much all the hype he had, and won a lot of games, so I enjoyed his career there. I would say he is a boom in college. As to what he's up to now, he is the 3rd-string quarterback for the Buffalo Bills, and also got married a few days ago, so congratulations to him. Justin Fields was seen as one of the best quarterback recruits of all time, but originally he was not going to go to Georgia, as he initially committed to Penn State. He'd later flip to Kirby Smart in Georgia, and their 2018 quarterback room could have included Fromm, Fields, and Eason. According to 24/7 Sports, he was a 5-star recruit, the number 1 dual-threat quarterback, and the 2nd best player in the class of 2018 behind Trevor Lawrence. During the 2018 season, he saw action in 12 games, passing for 328 yards, 4 touchdowns, and also rushing for 4 more scores on the ground. He eventually decided to transfer away from Georgia and became the feature QB in Ryan Day's first year at the helm in Columbus. Some thought it was questionable that he got a waiver, but nevertheless, he led the Buckeyes to the college football playoff, where they lost a heartbreaker to Clemson. He would come back in 2020 and had a very respectable season. He led them back to the playoff, where they would this time beat Clemson, and then would lose to Bama in the title game. He passed for nearly 6,000 yards and had 86 career touchdowns as a Buckeye. The Chicago Bears traded up to get him in the 2021 NFL Draft, and many expect him to be their franchise quarterback. While Justin Fields is the best quarterback on this list and was 100% a boom, I will give him a bust on this list because Georgia let him go. There was no reason the staff should not have done everything in their power to make sure he was on the roster, and they should have played him a lot more. This one's on you, Georgia, and sorry. Coming out of Oak Park High School in Michigan, Mathis was a big-time recruit. In reverse roles of Justin Fields, he actually originally committed to Ohio State, but he would later flip to Georgia. According to 24/7 Sports, Mathis was a 4-star recruit, the number 11 pro-style quarterback, and the 311th best player in the class of 2019. He had a tumor in his brain that wasn't going to kill him immediately, but he got good treatment and recovered. I was really happy to see he made that full recovery, and I remember that being in the news. Since JT Daniels was hurt and Jamie Newman opted out, Mathis was named the starter going into the 2020 season. After struggling in the first half against Arkansas, he was benched in favor of Stetson Bennett, and from there, Mathis' time at Georgia was pretty much done. He entered the portal this past offseason and would settle on the Temple Owls, so he will likely be the starter there in 2021. It's too early to tell if he was a bust, but in his time at Georgia, he never lived up to the hype when he got his actual chance. Coming out of the Georgia high school football system, Stetson Bennett was a star, but not good enough to get an offer to Georgia. He wore a signature mailman hat to recruiting camps, and he decided to walk on to the Bulldogs. After working hard in practice, he'd eventually earn a scholarship by Kirby Smart, and he was praised as the hardest worker on the team, but he'd end up leaving for the junior college world so he could actually see the field somewhere. He would come back to Georgia on scholarship though, but was never supposed to play. He started the year as the 4th-string guy, but with Newman opting out, Daniels getting hurt, and Mathis playing terrible, Stetson Bennett got a chance to start multiple games, including a game against Bama. At times he was great, but his talent and physical body limited his potential tremendously, and he just was not tall enough to be a starting SEC caliber quarterback. He was benched when JT Daniels finally came back, and will go down as a widely respected Georgia player. Based on his recruiting ranking and where he was on the team, he's actually a boom. The final guy on this list may not see starting reps in his entire Georgia career. Coming out of Jacksonville, Florida, Carsen Beck was a 4-star recruit and chose to take his talents to Georgia. 24/7 Sports rated him as the number 9 pro-style quarterback and the 250th best player in the class of 2020. He appeared in one game against Missouri last year, but I'm really worried he's never going to play. JT Daniels has the starting spot locked up, and after that, they have 5-star quarterback Brock Vandegrift as a freshman, and 5-star quarterback Gunnar Stockton is signed in the future. Ultimately, I expect Carsen Beck to transfer, and we have not seen enough out of Beck to classify whether he is a boom or a bust. So in today's video, we went through Georgia over the past 10 years and their 11 signed quarterbacks. Jacob Eason and Jake Fromm are the 2 biggest names on this list, and both of them had pretty solid careers. The rest of the guys either didn't live up to the hype, transferred away, or had limited roles to begin with. If we go back a few years, Matthew Stafford and Aaron Murray both became legends in the Bulldog uniform, and while some of these guys did struggle, I would say you're going to get an opportunity and have a pretty solid career if you go to Georgia. While they may not produce all the superstars in the world, I would not say Georgia is a bust factory. What do you guys think though? If you're a Georgia fan, let me know what you think of these quarterbacks and if you guys develop talent. Let me know what school I should do next. Hit that like button if you want to support today's video. Check out all my other videos in the series. Subscribe if you're new. Check out my podcast and all my other videos on the end screen, including my similar style video for Ohio State. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.